Welcome to the Rock is George podcast. I'm your host, George Dionne, and this is episode 110. Thank you for tuning in, and be sure to hit that subscribe or follow button, and check us out at theloudest.com on the planet, knac.com. My guest for this episode is Lane Steele. He is the frontman and mastermind behind the heavy metal act Worldwide Panic. They recently released their self-titled album, and here's Lane Steele to tell you all about it. If I knew absolutely nothing about Worldwide Panic, how would you describe the band's music to me?
It's a little bit of rock and roll, a little bit of industrial, a little bit of hard rock, a little bit of metal, and it meets in the middle somewhere with some pretty catchy choruses and some heavy hooks. And I haven't heard a band like it, so I think I'm doing something right.
I think you're doing something right. Is this Worldwide Panic a kind of labor of love as a solo project and you have a band to play it live, or is this a band thing that wrote this album and recorded it together?
That's a different horse of a different color. It's a little amorphous of both, George. It's this labor of love thing that I do because I'm a producer, songwriter, and this is how I express myself. And on the other hand, like, there's total unsung heroes, people who aren't even a part of the current live lineup that, made this album happen. Even though I self-produced everything and played rhythm guitar and bass and programmed the drums, there's real unsung heroes like this guy Brad Bernazzi in Pittsburgh, who did a great job mixing it and adding some extra samples. This guy Troy Powell, good friend of mine, Unattended Studios in Beloit, Wisconsin, who did all the guitar solos there and just did a fantastic job. There's Zeuss, who did Hatebreed and Chimera and Whitechapel and Rob Zombie, all that stuff, who mastered the record. I could sit here and be all like, I'm a self-made man, but every good effort, I think, takes like a team, what am I going to do? Go on stage and play the tracks? No, I'm going to have a band. And the guys in my band are good guys. We've been at it with this lineup now for almost, the guitar player 2.5 years and the drummer almost a year and change. So, that's good for a band at that point because it takes a lot to keep people together. The lineup that people knew before this one was 3 years, and then that was actually a contract, and I don't talk about that often. That was actually a contract that we wrote to be a band for those 3 years and do all those big tours that we did. And a bunch of times people wanted to walk, but we always pulled the contract out. It's a band. It's a labor of love. It's an obsession. It's a beautiful thing. It's a curse. It's all of those things in one, George.
Well, you got the new album coming out on February 17th. It's self-titled. You're releasing it through your Unbound Mind imprint. You have a few singles out already. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the song I Tried and your inspiration for that one.
Sure, man. Thanks for asking. Cool. That was the first song written for this record. Everything I feel like everything has to kind of start somewhere. And that was definitely the start. Okay, we did a couple singles. We have a couple tunes that we play live. We have the CP we put out. What's next? What's the natural ascension of things? And it took about, I want to say double digits in the draft making stage to get it to where it is now. It was the intro. It was always the intro. And when we came up with it was like, okay, that's great. It means, giving your best to somebody and that best not being good enough for that other person. And quite frankly, that's just something that happens to me like all the time, and it's something that I feel like other people can relate to as well. I was hanging out with a friend of mine, a drummer named Ken Schock. He was in a band called Candiria, and he was in a band called Fuel. You know, he's a songwriter producer himself, and we were going back and forth, and he's like, so in all these early versions of I Tried, all these demos, did you have I Try where you extended the word? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, they were hits anyway. And I'm like, man, you should have heard these stinker intros, man. They were real fucking, they were real, you know. And he's like, did it have that hook? And I'm like, yep. And he's like, it's a hit. Yeah. So it's just like, that song is a really emotional song for me. It definitely set the pace of what the record was going to kind of go for. Not a lot of, you know, there's not every record, not every song on that record sounds like I Tried, but it just kind of like, this is our flagship single. This is what we're going to put out to represent us for the next umpteen years in our life.
Now, the single that you have out is Less Than Nothing. If you want to talk a little bit about the inspiration behind that one.
That is just my story of being, you know, thrown out and accepted a million times by the industry, and, you know, just feeling like it's a machine that chews you up and shits you out, and just kind of, you know, I made it ambiguous enough to where people can kind of just relate to the feeling of somebody or something making them feel less than the person that they are. It's one of my personal favorites on the record. The song, you know, we put out a music video for it. It was really, really cool. I don't know if it's everybody's favorite song. You know, you put out an I Tried and then a Falling Apart, and both of those, you know, find homes on, you know, the Billboard Top 40 chart, and then you put out this really aggressive industrial metal song with a catchy hook, and the accolades aren't the same. So you kind of have to look within yourself and be like, okay, well, I'm not after it for that. I'm after it for the message that I conveyed, and that's good enough for me.
So is this whole album kind of focused on the struggles that you've had, either personally or within the industry? Because the more that I look at the track listing and think back to the song.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's very autobiographical. I don't write songs about like you know, dragons and elves and dwarfs and you know, all this stuff. You know, I write about things that I can wrap my head around that happened to me, and that I could share with somebody else. That's the whole reason I'm doing this, is to just kind of relate to people on a deeper level. The jokes are funny on stage, it's great, you know, but I mean, the whole meaning of all this is for everybody to not be embarrassed of, you know, having had gone through certain things in their life, and like just be accepting of themselves. Yeah, I mean, just the reason of calling it Worldwide Panic, I felt like the self-titled approach was just like the best way to go. And yeah, there's a ton of songs on there that talk about a lot of personal shit.
So it's like therapy for you.
I there's not enough therapy in the world for whatever I have.
Well, one thing you have a knack for is, as far as recording and music wise, is you do some great cover songs. On this one, you have Everybody Wants to Rule the World, and in the past, you released You Ought to Know by Alanis Morissette. So you certainly have some good influences there.
Thanks, buddy. Everybody Wants to Rule the World is going to come out on the 17th, on Friday, with the record. So people are searching on Spotify. I don't know when this is going to air, but like it'll come out with the record. The video came out yesterday. It was premiered on Sonic Perspectives. A lot of cool stuff there, man.
You went to metal producer extraordinaire Zeuss for this album. He seems to be the guy that you want putting this the final touches on your album. Is this the first time you did anything with Zeuss, or had you known him in the past?
So Zeuss mastered the album. I did the producing. He's all the way and I'm definitely going to mess this up. Connecticut. Zeuss and I became acquainted because of one of my mentors. One of my mentors, who's Blasco from Ozzy Osbourne, and he played bass in Rob Zombie. He manages Zach Wild. He manages like Veil Brides. He's a very prominent guy, and I just hit him up and was just like, who's the who, in modern mastering. He just introduced me to Zeuss, and the rest was history. And working with Zeuss was great. He was very much so a team player. When we added Falling Apart and took the other song off at the end, he could have raised hell and, all that stuff, because it was definitely work replacing that song and taking the other song off. And he was just a trooper about it. He was just so cool and so supportive and really cool dude. I don't know what the future holds, if we're going to actually do a project where he's going to produce or mix or do anything further. Right now, I'm kind of in a relationship. I'm in a relationship with a producer named Bob Marlette, and him and I are working on the follow up to this record already. More on that later. But the producer for the next record is Bob Marlette, and he did Black Sabbath. He did Ozzy. He did Sebastian Bach. He did Halford. He did Alice Cooper. He did Rob Zombie. This is, I'm in very good company.
What does your 2023 live show performances schedule look like?
Scary, because there's not a lot. We're booking and we're talking to a lot of people and we're trying to figure it out, but there's just tons of people still trying to play catch up with their lives after COVID, and there's this crazy pecking order of things where we're just kind of whatever. I hope that with this album and everything that's going on, that people will open their eyes.
Did you recently have a show, a multi-band event in California on the 11th?
Yes, we did. Yeah. This venue called Stages in Orange County, Santa Ana.
How did that go?
Yeah, it went. I have fun. I get up there and I do my bit, and I really get into it, and it was fun. There was a good amount of people there. We're going to be doing it again on the 25th of this month in Los Angeles. We're going to be doing some select stuff in other states, and then we're aiming up to do our own headlining run.
Is there a significant to your black and green war paint that you wear on stage?
Yeah, there's a big time significance with the war paint. It was something that I came up with a long time ago, before I even put myself in it, that I knew was going to be a very important part of this band. One of the guys who I started the band with, whatever, he wasn't really into the idea, and I just kind of went along with it, and kind of just, was like, okay. The meaning behind the paint is you're going to battle, and you're going to battle with your lesser self, and that's what we're doing every night when we're going on stage. We're going to battle with these issues that we bring up in these songs. It's a real thing, going to mental battle with yourself. And doing it through the medium of heavy music, Yeah, I know that people might find that answer goofy, laugh all the fuck you want, but that's the reason I dress in clown paint every night, because it means something to me, and I feel like I'm going up there fighting for my life.
I saw on social media that you attended the 6th annual Heavy Metal Hall of Fame. Were you a guest, or did you buy a ticket to attend?
I was a guest.
and sort of what is your experience at that Hall of Fame. I actually interviewed Pat Gesualdo, who puts the event together for the podcast. So he had given me a preview. So how did it all come out in the end?
There was a lot of guys I didn't know. I'm really not into the whole 80s, thing. Like there's a handful of stuff. Like I like what Kiss did Unmasked in the 80s. I like that. I like what Cooper did in the 80s. I like that. There's a handful of stuff I liked in the 80s, but I just was never into these. I'm not trying to be a jerk. There was like Lou Gramm, and I'm like, who's Lou Gramm? But yeah, I got to see Twisted Sister, and that's all that really mattered.
I was kind of surprised Lou Gramm was even included because he's the lead singer of Foreigner, and I never considered Foreigner to be heavy metal.
Yeah, no, that's definitely not.
You are also a self-proclaimed horror movie expert, and I saw your list of top 5 horror movies. You put Hellraiser at the top. Have you ever met Doug Bradley from Hellraiser? He likes heavy metal music. You have?
Absolutely. I've met Doug 3 times. I'm looking at a picture of Doug right now. I have numerous things all signed by Doug. Horror movies are just, a major part of my life. And just Hellraiser, just the way that, everything came together with the Cenobites and everything like that is just my favorite. It's by far my favorite.
Next time you see him, slip him a Worldwide Panic t-shirt because he loves his heavy metal t-shirts.
He likes metal. The other guy who I talked to, who's definitely worth mentioning, who actually likes Worldwide Panic, which blows my mind. I met him and he knew me, and I was like, "Oh, word!" And that is Kane Hodder, the guy who played Jason. Yeah, I went up to him and I did exactly what you said. I gave him a CD or sticker, and he's like, "You're more my Panic," and I'm like, "Yeah, dude." He's like, "Dude, like you want to know fucking rules?" And I'm like, "Oh, all right." And I was not prepared for that, but yeah, he definitely knew who I was. Yeah, I'm really big into horror movies. It's an obsession of mine. If I could give anybody a tidbit who's also into that kind of stuff, I recommend downloading this app called Letterboxd. It's not like IMDb. It's much more sophisticated, and you can see what other people are watching. You can gauge other people's tastes. You can look up lists. You can look up horror movies released 2023 newest, and it'll give you a list of everything that's basically come out this entire month, and from crazy $5 budget movies to the big stuff. I try to watch as much as I can. I try to give people as many good recommendations as I possibly can, but yeah, there's so much out there. And there's so much crap, and there's so much mislabeling that sometimes I'm just like, what the hell am I doing with my time?
I was a little disappointed there was no Tromaville movies in your top 5. That's kind of my go-to when it comes to horror movies.
I understand. I get it. A lot of people like Tromaville, and I just, when it comes to me, I just never been into the campy side of horror movies. Like, the furthest I go into the campy stuff is probably like, Evil Dead,
Those are all the questions I have for you today, Lane. Your new album, self-titled Worldwide Panic, comes out February 17th through Unbound Mind. Sounds great, and I hope you do well with it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Once again, I want to thank Lane Steele of Worldwide Panic for coming on the Rock is George podcast. Be sure to check out their latest self-titled album, out now. Head over to your favorite music streaming app. Take a listen to what's available. If you like what you hear, buy a physical copy. Support the artist. For all things Worldwide Panic, head over to their official website, worldwidepanicband.com. I also want to thank David of Freeman Promotions for making this interview possible. You've been great. I've been George Dionne. I'll see you again soon.